the empire that taught Europe about wealth, the story of Mali. Before Europe built its castles, before Asia raised its palaces, there stood a kingdom of gold, wisdom, and faith, the empire of Mali. A land where the sun kissed the rivers of Niger, where the drums spoke of kings and heroes, and where wealth was not stolen, but earned, traded, and honored. This is not a story of myth. This is the true legacy of Africa's golden empire, the empire that taught Europe what wealth, power, and knowledge truly mean. Welcome to Africa Untold.
Our story begins long before Mansa Musa. With a boy named Sundiata Keita, born crippled in body, yet chosen by destiny. They said he would never walk. But the spirits of Mali had other plans. Through faith and will, Sundiata stood, and when he rose, so did his people. By the 1230s, he had united the Mandinka clans, defeating the powerful Sasso king, Sumanguru Kante, in the legendary Battle of Karina.
That battle wasn't just a fight, it was the birth of a nation. From that day, Mali stood tall, stretching from the Atlantic coast to the heart of the Sahara. Under Sundiata, Mali became the crown jewel of West Africa, a land flowing with gold, salt, and faith. He built a system that balanced power and people, a council of elders, laws written in wisdom, and trade routes that connected kingdoms from Senegal to Sudan. See, while Europe was fighting in the Dark Ages, Mali was already building an economy so clean, so organized, it made gold flow like rivers. Salt from the Sahara met gold from the south, carried by camel caravans across deserts and forests. Traders called it the Trans-Saharan Highway of Wealth. And at the center of it all stood Mali.
Mali's people believed that wealth meant nothing without wisdom. So, they taught their children to count, to read, to speak the languages of trade and truth. Their griots, storytellers, were living libraries, passing down history not from paper, but from heart and memory. Every name, every battle, every king, carried in song, from generation to generation. That's how Africa remembered herself, through the power of voice.
Then came Mansa Musa, Sundiata's descendant, a man whose reign turned the empire into something divine. He rose to the throne around 1312, after the mysterious disappearance of his predecessor, Abu Bakr II, who, as the story goes, set sail across the Atlantic to find the edge of the world. With Musa's rise, the golden age of Mali began. Under Mansa Musa, Mali became so powerful that the world had to take notice. He reorganized the empire, governors in every province, scholars in every city. He made justice a symbol of his rule, and built mosques, schools, and libraries that turned Mali into a spiritual capital. But what set him apart was how he showed the world what true African wealth looked like.
In 1324, Mansa Musa decided to embark on a pilgrimage to Mecca, the Hajj, a spiritual journey required of every Muslim. But his journey wasn't just about faith. It became a statement, a message to the world. Africa is not poor. Africa is power. He traveled with an army of 60,000 men, 12,000 slaves dressed in silk, and hundreds of camels, each carrying over 300 pounds of gold dust. In Cairo, he stunned Egypt's ruler, al-Malik al-Nasir. He gave away so much gold to the poor, to traders, and to mosques, that the entire Egyptian economy collapsed under the weight of his generosity. Gold lost its value for over a decade. That's how rich Mali was. That's how Grand Mansa Musa's heart was. Imagine that. An African king so wealthy that his kindness rewrote the world's economy. He wasn't showing off. He was showing the truth, that our continent had long mastered the art of trade, diplomacy, and civilization. Europe watched, and they learned. After his pilgrimage, Mansa Musa returned home a legend. But he didn't return empty-handed. He brought back architects, scholars, and artists from across North Africa and the Middle East. Among them was the famous architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, who helped build the great mosque of Djinguereber in Timbuktu, a masterpiece that still stands today. made of earth, wood, and faith.
Timbuktu became more than a city. It was the center of African learning. Its University of Sankore drew scholars from Cairo, Fez, and even Europe. Over 25,000 students studied there. And its libraries held hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. In science, mathematics, astronomy, law, and poetry. At a time when Europe's kings could barely write their names, African scholars were debating the movements of the stars. This was the legacy of Mali. A blend of faith, knowledge, and strength. Even after Mansa Musa's passing in 1337, his empire's influence stretched far beyond Africa. Arab historians like Al-Umari wrote about his wealth. European mapmakers placed Mali on the world map, with a golden crown marking Musa's throne. Centuries later, when Europe began its so-called Age of Discovery, they followed trade routes that Mali had already built. They adopted gold standards, taxation systems, and governance models that echoed what African empires had done long before them. Yes, Europe learned wealth from Africa, not the other way around.
But time has a way of turning stories into silence. As Mali declined under the pressure of invasions and internal struggles, the world forgot. Or rather, it was made to forget. Colonial history buried the truth beneath lies. They told the world Africa was primitive, while the dust of Timbuktu still hid the pages of ancient genius. But now, the story returns. Through voices like yours. Through Africa Untold.
Because the truth is clear. Africa was never behind. We were ahead, trading gold, building universities, and ruling empires, when others were still learning to write their names. So when you hear of wealth, remember Mansa Musa. When you hear of power, remember Sundiata Keita. And when they speak of greatness, remind them that Africa once taught the world. This is the story of Mali, the empire that taught Europe about wealth, the empire that built with wisdom, the empire that walked in gold. I am Africa. I am royalty. And my story will never fade again.